Verse 6 begins by saying that Solomon arrives for his wedding. What is that coming up from the wilderness like columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the fragrant powders of a merchant? Behold, it is the litter of Solomon. Around it are 60 mighty men, some of the mighty men of Israel, all of them wearing swords and experts in war, each with his sword at his thigh against terror by night. King Solomon made himself a carriage from the wood of Lebanon. He made its post of silver, its back of gold, its seats of purple, its interior was inlaid with love by the daughters of Jerusalem. Go out, O daughters of Zion, which look upon King Solomon with the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, on the day of the gladness of his heart. Chapter 4, Solomon admires his bride's beauty. Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead. Again, Solomon is trying his best, like all of us men do, to compliment. I don't think my wife Samantha would love for me to say that her hair is like a flock of goats leaping down a mountain. But then again, she may not love your teeth are like a flock of short ewes, which have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost its young. Your lips are like a scarlet thread, your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like the halves of a pomegranate behind your veil. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built in rows of stone. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them shields of warriors. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. Until the day breathes and the shadows flee, I will go away to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peak of Amana, from the peak of Sennar and Hermon, from the dens of lions and the mountains of leopards. You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. All right, pause right there because all of us just thought this for a second. He is not marrying his sister. That is not what this is saying. When you read that, like, wait. He is comparing his newlywed bride to already being like family. He's saying, I love you so much that even though it is the first day of our wedding, it is like you are already a part of a family. I feel at home with you. Again, Hebrew poetry from this time is a little bit different than ours. I probably would never call my wife my sister for good reason. He says, you have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. Your lips drip nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. A garden locked is my sister, my bride. A spring locked, a fountain sealed. Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates with the choicest fruits, henna with nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes and choice spices. A garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon. Awake, O north wind, and come, south wind, blow upon my garden, let its spices flow. Let my beloved come to his garden and eat his choicest fruits. Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 1. I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh, my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. And then others join in. Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. Okay. Everyone is awake now. If the worship didn't wake you up, well, you're awake now. We are on week 3 of this sermon series, and we have talked about this idea of how we are to pursue a godly marriage. And it's something that we should be pursuing much like we would pursue running a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not something that we can just get on a treadmill and say, hey, I did this and get off. It is something that is a continual pursuit. So whether you are a young person in the room and you're not even thinking of marriage yet, it's still something to pursue because as we pursue being a godly person, part of being a godly person is considering, am I becoming a godly spouse? As we go through the dating process, it is, hey, are we living godly ways as we're married? Am I being a godly spouse, and am I pursuing my spouse in a godly way? Last week, we talked about this idea that a godly marriage is one where you spend more time preparing for the 50 years of marriage than you do for a 50-minute wedding ceremony. This is where we get Christianity gets marriage vastly different than culture. In culture, everything is about that 50-minute ceremony. Everything is about that party. It's about, hey, the groom has his shoes that he picks his Jordans to wear with his tuxedo. And then, afterwards he's got this outfit to wear. The guys now change outfits 4 times. All of these things. And we spend so much time in our culture making sure the wedding is perfect. And often, we completely forget to ever prepare for the 50 years that follow the ceremony. And so we walk into it in debt because we spent all of this money on this wedding. And then we're like, well, what do we do now? All right, so we talked about that idea last week. And we also talked about this idea of viewing intimacy in marriage as either a god or gross, or as this passage makes it abundantly clear, God it makes it a gift from Him for a man and a wife to enjoy as husband and wife. All right, so a couple disclosures about this passage. These passages, chapters 3 through 5, are the middle of the book. That's intended to be the point of them being in where they are. Is Solomon is making this point that the whole book is about these chapters. The entire book is about him and his bride on their wedding. And then it is intended to be poetry. So again, he did not marry his sister. Okay? He's not comparing his wife to his sister in looks. He may compare her to a flock of sheep, but he does not compare her to his sister. He is saying she is like family. And it's supposed to depict an ancient wedding and honeymoon. And it is intended to show the joys of attraction and how much joy there is when we follow God's design. Because God really does want us to have joy. He doesn't just make bizarre rules for us. Okay? When God has these commandments in Scripture, God is not simply throwing things out in heaven as bizarre tests of us. Well, I'm going to do this to see if you guys will do it. That's not what he's doing. He's also not trying to steal our joy. God is not up in heaven as an angry, bearded man who's just trying his best to make sure we have no fun on this earth. What God is doing is God is intending to give us more joy. He is intending to give us rules that lead us into better joy. So, how many of you would say that you really enjoy a good s'more? Anybody in here like a s'more? Okay. I thought about making s'mores this morning for everyone, but it's too hot. It's too hot for me to make 200 s'mores. So, I love s'mores. I grew up having s'mores regularly, consistently in my life. And I actually wanted to, for a while, start a s'more food truck. I had this goal of when we were living in Ohio, I was like, I'm going to start a food truck that sells only s'mores. And because if you like s'mores, have you ever had a s'more with the Reese peanut butter cup in it? Anyone? Yeah. Infinitely better. Now, we have healthy chefs in here. Nothing I'm about to recommend is healthy, but it is good. So, I didn't get this body by being healthy, let me tell you. There's also s'mores with raspberry jam in them. There's all these different s'mores that you can do that are really, really good. And I love s'mores. They are my guilty pleasure. I can typically turn down cake. I can typically turn down cupcakes. I can typically turn down ice cream. But there has never been one moment in my life where someone offered me a s'more and I was like, no thanks, I'm on a diet. All the rules are out the window when it comes to s'mores because they're amazing. They're incredible. Graham cracker, golden, marshmallow. Now, my wife is not here today, so I get to talk about her. My wife, if this picture was us at a bonfire, she would have her s'more marshmallow shoved into the fire, and it would be completely on fire. Any of you like that? Yeah? Oh, okay. We will have an altar call when this service is done. You can all come forward. I don't know if in the Baptist world pastors can accept repentance, but I'm going to today because you ruined it. S'mores are incredible. I like everything about the s'more process. Okay, so growing up, man, we would rake leaves and we would gather sticks. And we would start a fire, and we put them in a little ring like this. And then what you gotta do is you gotta wait till the wood is mostly burned. And then there's coals. And then you gotta find a good enough stick to stick that stick right up over, but not too close to those coals. Because if you're a Christian, then you don't burn your s'more. You don't do that if you're a Christian. The pagans in the room do. And you just let it get like golden brown. And you slowly just keep turning it and turning it and turning it. And pretty soon that marshmallow is at its peak. And then you slap it on to some graham cracker and you put either Hershey's or Reese's peanut butter cup on there. Sometimes I do both, full confession. And you do it with friends and family. That's one of the great, beautiful things about this, right? So we went to Yellowstone a couple years ago, and we have these mountains in the back. We had been fly fishing for trout all day. We were in the river all day. We came out of the river. We started a fire. We let the wood burn kind of down. We did all of these s'mores. There's like beautiful mountains. There's animals in the background, and my dad is roasting marshmallows, and he starts telling stories about growing up, and it's like one of my core memories, like one of the best things ever. One time, a couple years ago, we went to our family vacation. Bless you. We went to our family vacation, and we went to this house, and we usually do s'mores late at night. We've been in the water all day swimming, and my wife's grandmother came down. I'll never forget this. She's 88 years old. She came down. She usually has already gone to bed, but this night, the fire was good, and she came walking down, and she sat in a chair beside me, and we started roasting marshmallows, and I started asking her about when she started dating her husband. She told me, well, the first time he ever asked me out, I was like, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, let's go to the city dump and shoot rats. She was like, so they settled for pizza instead. Better idea, I guess. And I'll never forget, as long as I live, just her grandma and me just sitting by this fire and her just telling me all of these stories. It's kind of like what a fire does, is it gathers people together and it creates these beautiful things called s'mores. But one time, we did not put a little ring around that fire. We had to rake a whole bunch of leaves, and we put all these leaves down, and we did s'mores, and we thought we put the fire out. Now, it's up for debate who didn't put the fire out still. It's hotly debated. But we didn't put the fire out, apparently. And all night the wind blew, and the next morning the wind was blowing. We were all in the house. My dad was gone, and my mom said, she was washing dishes, and my sister Angie walked up and said, hey, Mom, the backyard's on fire. And then she walked off. And my mom was like, okay, thanks, honey, and just kept doing what she was doing. And a couple minutes later, my sister came back and said, Mom, the backyard's still on fire. And Mom was like, okay, I'll get it in just a second. Just give me a second, I'll get it for you. And then my other sister looked out the window, Christine, and was like, the Lord's on fire, started screaming. We all ran out, but this is where this is similar to how our backyard looked at this point. So here's what happened. We all run outside, except for my sister Angie, who's mad that none of us listened to her when we told her. So she's like, you guys get what you deserve. You should have listened. So she just stood there in the house like, I already told you. And she wouldn't move. My other sister tried to run and get a hose and grab the hose and run towards the fire, but the hose was like 15 feet long and the fire was like 80 feet away. So she's trying to pull this hose. Me and my brother ran down to our lake. We got buckets. We started bringing buckets of water out of the lake and throwing them on the fire. And my mom came running down screaming, because why not? And she came running down screaming, and I had just watched a show called Young Riders. Anyone in here old enough to have watched, or redneck enough to have watched Young Riders? We got like 3 of us, okay. All right. On this show, Young Riders, this guy's barn is on fire, so what do? They throw the water on the guy, because why not? He runs in and pulls the horses out of the fire. So when I saw my mom, I just instantly started throwing water on her. Just chucking water at her, because I watched the show the night before. Somehow we got this fire to be put out. But you know that this fire caused fear, it caused destruction, it caused anger, it caused rejection, and it caused shame. Because we still fight to this day about who was supposed to put the fire out and didn't effectively do it. So when you have s'mores, they're a wonderful, incredible gift. If you put them in the ring of fire, and if you put that fire out when it's done, and if you take care of it, and if you do everything right, you get to have this incredible little wonderful blessing. But if there's no barrier for the fire, and no one takes care of one, and no one follows the design for the fire, you end up having fear and shame and rejection, just like most of us in this room have experienced, because we are all part of something called the sexual revolution, where everything in our life, everything that was designed to be a good thing, was thrown out the window because we said, this is good, and it is good. But we said, let's make it even better by completely eliminating the borders for the fire. So rather than a family sitting together and enjoying good s'mores, we were running for our life putting out a fire. And this has happened to so many of us because there's a design and a way and a pattern to follow that leads to really good things. So point number one in your listening guide, we should desire God's gift of marital intimacy. We should desire God's gift of marital intimacy. This is a gift that God has intended to be a blessing, and every good gift comes from God, and it is not something that we should be ashamed of or embarrassed of. It's not something that Christians should talk about in a gross way. And again, this is not typical in our culture. What happens in our culture? In our culture, everyone is allowed to be attracted to each other and encouraged to be allowed to be attracted to each other unless you're a mom and dad. And then every TV show, every song, every movie depicts any form of attraction between a mom and dad. Even if they kiss, what do the kids on the commercials immediately do? Ooh, that's gross. Why? Because Satan is actively trying to push culture against God's gift as much as he possibly can. But God designed this to be a really good thing. There is nothing wrong with wanting your marriage to look like the marriage in this passage. In fact, God wants our marriage to be like the one we just read about. Both Solomon and his bride are enjoying this honeymoon, and God wants our marriages to be enjoyed. Marriage is ultimately a picture of heaven, and heaven is to be enjoyed. But, point number two, we should honor God's design for marital intimacy. Just like the s'more is best when following the design for the fire, so is our marriage. God has a design for marriage, and we need to honor that. The sexual revolution had no rules, so it led to fear, destruction, and shame. But when we honor God, it leads to being free of comparison, free of rejection, free of shame, free of destruction, and free of fear. God's design, when we honor it, leads to freedom. Our culture will do everything they can to tell you that following God's design leads you to no freedom. And when you break his design, you actually find freedom. And they do this in everything. Not only do they do it blatantly, but subconsciously. This is why every movie right now, if you have kids and your kids watch any Disney movie, what happens on any Disney movie? There's a design, the parents are enforcing it, and the child is right in breaking it and going their own way, and everything becomes better when they break that design. All of culture is against us following the design of God. All of culture is subconsciously pushing against the concept of a father and a mother loving each other and lovingly instructing their children in the ways of the Lord, and the children follow. Even, I just happen to really like the rock on Moana. What can I say except you're welcome? Right? Awesome. But what's the movie about? Hey, we stay on the island. Well, not me. I get off the island, and if I do, everything is better. It's a great story. It's fun to watch. I even yell, wahoo, sometimes like The Rock does. But it's all of culture saying, hey, no, you don't need to honor the design. You need to figure out your own design. And so many times, people do that, and we do that, and we find shame, we find fear, we find comparison, we find insecurity. And God says, hey, honor my design, and you will actually find freedom. So, God's design is not only meant to free us, but it also is intended to produce children. It is intended to produce children. This should be right underneath point 2 in your listening guide. It's intended to produce children. It's also intended to be relational glue. It's intended to be relational glue. It's intended to pull us together closely. There's a pastor in Wyoming named Levi Lesko, and he says this. He says, intimacy is never only skin deep. And there's actually science behind this concept. The more connected we are with our spouse, we actually develop grooves in our brain. And these grooves in our brain are grooves that are built more and more and more the more common that we practice intimacy. And the problem is when we're intimate with all of these other people besides our spouse, we then have multiple tracks and multiple grooves in our brain. And so this is where we lead to confusion and a lack of connection and a lack of commitment. But the more we follow God's design, the deeper the grooves in our brain grow. And the more connected we become to the person that God blessed us with. But it also is communication. Intimacy is communication. Now, if you were paying attention, I read those verses super fast because I low-key got embarrassed. But he starts at her hair and continues down from there. All right? All the way down. So what is he doing? He is communicating to her. He's saying to her, I love you and I approve of you. Now, he may say it by saying your teeth are like sheep that have just been sheared. Okay? And that may not be how we say it. But if you paid attention to Song of Solomon 1 and now all the way down in 3 and 4 and 5, when he meets her, what does she say? Don't look at me, I'm not attractive. And then all the way through the next 4 chapters, he is continually communicating to her, I approve of you, and I love you, and I think you're beautiful. And he's like, you're altogether lovely. That word lovely is interesting because he's saying, you are lovely to look at, but so much more than just lovely to look at. You're lovely to be around. What is he doing? What is Solomon doing? He is communicating security into their relationship. He is talking to a lady that has been insecure, and as he communicates over and over and over and over again, he is building security into her, not only in herself, but also in their relationship. It is ultimately a way that we communicate, that we love and approve of each other. He is communicating desire for her and confidence in her. And then last, in these 4 subpoints, it is for fun and for pleasure. It is for fun and for pleasure. But the difference here is that culture views the idea of intimacy being for fun and pleasure as, I am going to find the person who is fun for me. And these chapters we just read, it's very clear that they are saying, I am going to find a person and then I'm going to do my best to please them. And so this is a vastly different look at intimacy, because our culture is all about, I will run through people until I find a person who is able to please me. I will do whatever it takes to be pleased, no matter the rules. But in this relationship, it's very clear that they are saying, hey, I am here to serve you. And they're both saying it to each other. So it is communicating that this is for fun and for pleasure, but it is done in a different way than culture says. So point number 3 in your listening guide, Christian marriage should point family and friends to Christ. It should point family and friends to Christ. You say, how in the world does that do that? Well, I worked for 10 years at a company called FedEx Freight. I was a third shift forklift driver, and I had my forklift operator license, so I loaded trucks. And we started at 10 p.m., we worked till about 6 a.m., and then I went from there. I would go into, I would drive back to college, and I would walk in, and I would shower and change, and I would go to my first class, and then my class would end, and then finally when classes were completely done, I would go to bed until about 9 o'clock, and then I would wake up, and I'd do it all again, over and over and over again. And what I learned was I worked with a lot of guys, and 99% of them were completely miserable in their marriages. And when I got married and had a happy, good marriage, they instantly all cared a lot more about what I had to say about Jesus. Not because I was walking around telling them everything I knew about Jesus, but because I actually loved my wife and she loved me. And they were like, wait, you want to see your wife this weekend? Like, yeah, she's pretty awesome. Are you serious? Yeah, she's pretty great. When we have really healthy, happy marriages, it is vastly different than our culture. When our culture is like, hey, we're going to get together, we can then turn all of the glory to Him, because we're not capable of doing that on our own. None of us are. When I read Song of Solomon, I realize, hey, I am falling so short in my marriage. But I have God who I can look to help me. And when we have healthy, happy marriages, we can then give all of the glory to Him, which then causes our neighbors, our friends, and our family to say, maybe there is something to this whole Jesus thing. But not only that, but when we have healthy, happy marriages, our kids want to emulate what they see. So I'm the youngest of 4. My parents will celebrate 50 years this year in July. And they pastored a church that just turned 50 last year. They've been married 50 years. And you know what's really interesting? All of my nieces and nephews, they all continually just hang around my parents. And when we're all together, what do they ask? How'd you guys meet? How'd you guys get married? And they all want to build relationships like my parents have. And my parents have the capability then of having that conversation steered toward, God had us a design. When you follow the design, it leads to really great blessings. And when you don't, occasionally your backyard light's on fire. We're able to point our friends and our family, we're able to point a broken culture to a God who heals and saves. And this is right here where you're like, okay, well, I can't do that because we don't have this passage. Our marriage isn't just like what you just read. Well, here's the beautiful thing. God's mercies are new each and every morning. So no matter where you are in your relationship status, there is hope for tomorrow because God has new mercies tomorrow for you. You may have come in here today in the middle of a fight and had to smile because we have the world's best greeter team and they were smiling at you, and so you were like, ooh, yeah. And the whole way on your way in, you were what? Yelling at each other and fighting over which coffee shop to go to? You may have come in here at the end of your relational road. And there's hope for tomorrow. Because we find hope in a person named Jesus Christ. And when we go to him and we say, God, I am not what I just read. I'm not even who I want to be. God has new mercies for us and new mercies for us. But here's something really fascinating about this passage. When the lady's saying, like, who's coming out of this wilderness? Who's this coming? There's like smoke, there's all this guys. And then she talks about this Solomon guy has 60 men with him armed for war. She goes down a couple more verses and she's like, hey, daughters of Zion, you should celebrate. She goes down another verse and she's like, Solomon got his crown from his mom. And you go all the way down to the very end of this passage, and there's these random people who are like, man, eat and drink love. You know what's happening in here? They're not doing this alone. They're symbolizing that their relationship is built in community and around godly people who have the same struggles as them and are learning along with them. That's what a church service is. None of us are perfect at this. And a church service is those of us gathering together to hear from Scripture. And then what do? Then we go into our lives and we say, we'll be the church in here, now we're going to go be the church out there. And a part of being the church out there is out there with each other. And we go and we begin to seek out advice from people who are further down the road from us. And we begin to lean on other people. And we begin to talk to other people. And we begin to grow with each other because we grow best when we grow together. You're not alone. Your marriage may be struggling, but you're not alone. You may not be married. You're not alone. You may have given up on the concept. You're not alone. You may be young and it's very daunting to think about all of this coming up down the road. You're not alone. You may have newborn children and you're like, bro, what you're talking about? Come on. You're not alone. You may be up in yours. You're not alone. We're in this together. We grow best when we grow together. And we're all together trying to look at him and point each other to him and take steps in our relationship. One of the steps that we take is each and every week, we eat this bread and we drink this cup and we do it together. Why do we do it together? Well, one of the reasons we do it together is we remind ourselves that we're a family and we're here for each other and with each other.